Hey guys, this is Larfen, and welcome to the long overdue new installment of my video analysis. So let's just hop right into this first replay. We got This One's For You by Nightshade. Let's take a look at it. So it's this classic gravity split into elbow dismemberment, and then you got a nice little spin at the end. So let's take a look at this. So we got off with like a little standard spinny opener. Nothing too out of the ordinary here. I mean, get a little spin to get yourself set up so you can do more spins, because as you know, the goal of Tour Bash is to do as many spins as possible. I feel like he could have used his opener a little bit better here though. You can see what he does is he turns left, and then he pretty much does an almost full 360 and lands on both of his feet here so that he can pop himself up. I mean, that's not a bad option. Like you get a lot of spin out of that pose that he puts himself in. The thing is, I feel like he could have done a little bit more smoothly. He could have done the option that he did here and then just tried to like not stay in this pose for as long as he does, because he does stay in it for a little bit, and it kind of like you can see that he sort of pauses in it for a little bit because he has to sort of fall down into it because he's not all the way to the ground yet. And the other option, which is probably what I would have done in this case, but as you know, my option isn't always the best option, but what I would have done is I would have seen that his left leg here is contracted. So I think that if he extended his left glute a little bit earlier in the replay, like maybe here even, if he extended his left glute, then he could have brought his left leg outwards, then used that to kick the ground, and that could have continued his momentum in a spinny way. Could have increased his spinny momentum, and he could have continued his opener a little bit more smoothly that way. But this is still a solid option, but I feel like it's a little bit generic and also doesn't flow as well as what I would have done. And like I said, he could have, I think if he spent a little bit more time editing this opener, he could have gotten a little bit more smooth in that transition. But what he did wasn't awful. I just feel like it could have been executed a little bit better, or maybe even done a completely different option than what he chose. So, after he lands in this position, he pushes himself up and gets a nice little jump spin kick thing. So, nothing really wrong with the jump here. He uses his right arm to raise himself up. It keeps him, and I'm assuming that he only raises his right arm, because if he raised his left arm, then that would have thrown him a bit off balance. That can happen, so I'm gonna assume that that's what he did, because you can see that his spin is very, very balanced here. Not really tilted in any way, and that's good to have. It's good to have a nice balanced spin, if that's what you're going for. Sometimes an unbalanced spin can look good if that's what you want. So he uses his right arm, gets a nice little spin here. The spin itself, it's another sort of, he stays in this pose for too long. Like, after he gets around here, the only thing that's really moving, around here more like it, the only thing that he's moving is like his arm down a little bit. But he just sort of stays with both of his knees bent for like, what is it, 20-30 frames? Which is a bit longer than it should be. Maybe if he hadn't contracted his knees as quickly, or maybe if he had left his hips a little bit extended, it would have made a little bit more of an interesting spin. But as it is, it's a little bit boring, and like he's sort of stuck in this position, which isn't really that good looking in my opinion. But then, after he gets out of the spin, he brings his leg around and gets a nice little chest dismemberment. Nothing really to say here. It does its job. He does it in a good way. Nothing really else he could have done there to make it look better. I think he did a good job with that. So then after the chest dismemberment, he reaches up with his right hand and gets a nice grab right here. Basically, that's the only thing he could have done. There's really not much. There's not much else he could have done to follow up that split kick. That's really one of the problems with doing a split kick opener like this, especially when you're in the air, because it's really hard to follow up with anything besides a grab and then another kick. It really limits your options when you do a jumping spin kick. I know this because I used to make replays like every day where it was a jumping spin kick, and they'd all look the same. Because pretty much the only thing you can do here is just grab and kick. So I'm not saying that it was a bad idea to spin kick and it looks good, but I'm just saying if you're going for a spin kick, you should make sure that you can accept the fact that your fate is probably already determined when you go for that spin kick, for that jumping spin kick. If you're on the ground, that's a different story. So he gets the grab, as he should, and then he does a really nice job at planting his right arm here to bring his foot around for this elbow dismemberment. And the setup for this kick is very nice. The whole flow in between this split kick and the next kick is definitely top notch. There's pretty much it's very good. There's not much to complain about in that section right there. But as for the hit itself, he's dismembering an elbow, and you can also see that one second, it's hard to maneuver this camera. You can see that like the part of his leg that's hitting the elbow is his shin and not his foot, which, as I've said before, I'm not a big fan of, hitting with the shin rather than your actual foot. And the other problem I have with this is that it's an elbow dismemberment, and he doesn't do anything else, which I think is definitely a problem. That kick almost definitely should have been a decap or something. Like, I don't think there's any excuse really for him not getting a decap with that kick. I think that's almost like required, because just getting an elbow dismemberment, that's pretty anticlimactic, and it's not really it just leaves the replay feeling incomplete if all you're getting is an elbow dismemberment at the end. So I'm really not a fan of the placement of that second kick, although the movement leading up to it is very nice and I do like it a lot. But the placement of the kick is definitely something I feel like should have been changed. But then after this kick, he gives that piece, he kicked off a little bit of a throw, plants both of his feet, and does this really nice, I don't know, cork. I'll never know these terms. It's a jump spin. So he lands, does this nice little spin. In the middle of the spin, he raises both of his arms, which I think he could have done without. I don't know how good the spin was looking with both of his arms down, but I think that this is a much nicer and better looking position to spin in than this. And then he does a really nice job at landing on both of his feet really smoothly into a nice pose. So, in conclusion, it's not a bad replay, but there's a little lack of creativity here, and the lack of decap really bothers me. But I think there's some people who really don't mind if the replay doesn't have a decap, but I do mind. So that's it. So our next replay here is going to be Haimang by Colors. It's a little bit of a split cap kind of thing, except there's not actually a decap, but it does the same job really. So let's look at this. So this opener, I'm just gonna say I love this opener. It's so creative, I think. So the very beginning, like this part isn't like so creative. This is pretty normal. But what he does afterwards, I think, is really, really cool. So if you've been playing the game for a while, you can kind of see what's gonna happen here. You can be like, oh, he's gonna rotate his chest right. He's probably gonna plant his leg. Probably gonna spin on his right leg a little bit. Maybe kick off with his right leg. So then he'll just sort of do a sideways spin, maybe a little bit horizontal to the ground, and then probably do like a spin kick or something. That's what it looks like he's gonna do. But then he does this really interesting movement where he contracts his left hip, which I think is a brilliant move. Maybe brilliant is overselling it, but I think it's a great idea. He contracts his left hip, and that's just nothing like you would have expected. I did not see that coming, and he executes it very well, because I mean the reason that you expect something to happen is because that's the thing that looks good. So when he does something that looks good that you don't expect to happen, that's all the better. So I really like the creativity in this opener. He still is kind of doing the horizontal spin like I was talking about, but the fact that he contracts his left hip there, it just gives it a new dimension, which I think is really good, and it's a really creative move. So I applaud him for doing that. So then he goes into this. The problem with it, though, not the problem with it, but he ends up having to grab first, which I'm not a fan of. Like I've said before that I don't really like it when people grab before they start dismembering Uke, because it makes it look like you ended up going where you didn't want to, and you had to compensate for it with a grab, which it definitely looks like, because you can see he's flying off sort of to the right of Uke, and he's not in the best position to start dismembering. Maybe a good option, it would have resulted in a completely different replay, but maybe a better option would have been to take this right leg, bring it around, maybe contract both of his glutes here, and then get like an elbow dismemberment or something. Then he could use his left leg, extend it, plant it on the ground. You could be relaxed. Then he could plant his left leg, and then bring his body around. Then maybe get the grab that he's going for here. Maybe, yeah, I guess that would have been probably better if he had gotten a dismemberment with his right leg here, and then gotten that grab, and then gone in for whatever. I think that would have been nicer. But this is what he ends up going with. He gets this grab, and then he sort of changed his momentum around, which he definitely does it as well as one can. Yeah, I don't really have a problem with him changing his momentum here. A lot of the time, if you spin one way and then start spinning the other, it doesn't look that good, but he does a good job of it here. So, and then he gets a nice little double core here. He hits a bit with his shin, but I don't really mind because he's getting a double core, which is an awesome looking kick. And it definitely has a lot of power behind it. You can see that he's just really kicking the shit out of Uke's chest here. So, good job on that. And then he quickly brings his other leg around, early grab release, into a nice chest boom here. So, pretty good job linking up those two kicks. If I have one complaint, it's that around here, his upper body is a little bit, like, before the second kick and a little bit after it, his upper body is a little bit stiff looking. And I think he could have fixed that a little bit. But I assume he's just focusing on the kick. But you got to make sure that you can focus on everything. And then he sort of gets that pec stuck on his foot. That can happen sometimes. It's usually a cute little thing to leave on. I think he could have done something nice with it, though. Like, maybe he could have rotated his chest and sort of brought his leg around, then contracted his knee and then sort of flicked it up at Yuke's head, maybe a little foot skeet. Like, can you see that? How he could sort of rotate his chest around and then hook his leg and then throw it up at Yuke. I think he could have done that, but he ends up just leaving it on, then just letting it fall off on the ground. And I think in this case, it would have been better if he had not left it on his foot. I don't know how he could have done that, really, because when that happens, it happens. There's no real stopping the peck from being on your foot, I don't think. But I feel like he could have done something with it rather than just sort of leave it on and then let it fall off. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I think it could have worked as a skeet. Maybe he could have just sort of spiked it into the ground more as more of a definitive motion than rather just letting it fall off naturally. And then he goes in this little cork thing into a pose. So overall, I would have liked it if he had gotten the decap as usual, but I think he does a good. I think the boom in the second hit there does basically the same job as the decap, so I'm not really going to complain about it here. Going into the pose looks a little bit half-assed, as it usually is. Like, I do that a lot too. Just because going into, like, you feel like the replay's already done, but it's not. You should try and put the same amount of effort that you used at the beginning of the replay to get into your pose, and try to make it look smooth as possible. But I really like that opener, and he's definitely doing some creative movement options that I haven't seen a lot of people do. So this is definitely a good replay. Our next replay here is going to be Tighten Up by Fudgy Balls. It's a manipulation decap thing, and I really like it. So let's go into it. So he starts off with the extended glutes opener. I mean, nothing really to say about it. We all know it. We all love it. Maybe. I know some people don't love it, but I like it. And always the thing with using this opener is that you gotta come up with something. Like, you gotta use it in a way that not a lot of people know. And I think he did a really good job at utilizing this opener, because he does this really interesting knee spin sort of thing. You can see that his knees are just sort of on the ground, and he's spinning around on them. And I think that's a really cool idea, like just using your knees as the things to spin on rather than your feet. He does a really good job making it look good. He gets out of it really smoothly. He kicks off the ground and gets into that nice, juicy first manipulation hit. So really good job that opener. I really like it. Next, he gets that armpit set up with the leg, and then quickly follows it up with a hook there. That second hit doesn't. The second thing he did there doesn't really look like he did much, and I know exactly why. It's because he's not planted on the ground firmly enough. I think that comes from his left leg here. He sort of extends it, which gives him a little bit of a jump, which you don't really want when you're making manipulation. You want to be on the ground while Yuke is up in the air. So you can see that the second hit doesn't really do much, because if he really tried to make it do something, he would move just as much, and it wouldn't be very easy to follow up on it. So what could have been a really strong scissor kick spin getting thing ends up just sort of tilting Yuke to his right a little bit. So I feel like there's definitely something that could have been done here to make it a little bit better. I don't know exactly what, because I didn't make the replay, but this is definitely something that should have been changed, I think. The second hit has a lot to be desired in it. So afterwards, he gets his hand on the ground here, uses it very nicely to spring himself towards Yuke to get another hit on the legs there. That hit is really nice. I really like how he uses his arm there to hit off the ground and then hit the legs. And then you can see as he hits the legs, it sort of knocks him down towards the ground a little bit again, so that he can use his legs to plant himself to get another nice movement in there. He sort of stalls Yuke on his hand a little bit there. It looks like he gets a little bit of a spin off of it. Looks nice. I like that hit. It's cute. Spins on the ground really nicely. And then this hit, I feel like, could have been a little bit better. His knee is already pretty much completely contracted. Like, you can see his knee is contracted here. So you can see that he has to extend it a little bit and then contract it again to get the hit that he wants. And the hit that he does doesn't really seem to be that effective. So I think he could have done something a little bit nicer with that foot there. Maybe like he could have brought the hip back a little bit slower and then used the bottom of his foot to sort of press against Yuke's face, and then use that to get a nice little Yuke sort of do a front flip. See how he can sort of like push back on Yuke's face with his foot there, and then that can do some stuff. So I think that hit could have been something a little bit better than what it was. Then he does this really nice job at spinning around. 1 second. He's sort of on his tiptoe there. Then he switches foot, quickly turns around, and gets this nice decap. Once again, this is kind of a shin hit. Would have been nice if he had gotten the hit with his foot. Maybe he could have timed his kick a little differently. If I would have really liked it, I think it would have looked nice if he had done a contracted ankle with this kick. I think that's the kind of setting that he'd want on his foot for this. If he had a contracted ankle, I just think it would have looked nicer, and he would have not gotten that decap with his ankle there. Really cute, sort of head spinning on his hand there. And I guess that's it. So overall, there are a few manipulating hits that I think could have been executed a little bit better, but he definitely does everything very smoothly, and he's got a lot of creativity in that opener there. So I definitely don't have too many problems with this replay. It's definitely a really solid one. It's pretty good. It's really good. So our last replay here is going to be Strong by High Power. This is a Sambo Madman kind of thing. It's got some cute self-damage stuff in here. You can see there. Got a ski at the end. Got a pose. It's got stuff in it. So here we go. This opener to start with, it's alright. It's kind of similar to the very common extended glutes opener in classic mode, even though this is Sambo. You can see that like it gets him low. It's symmetrical. It's mostly relaxed. Only problem is that this looks like a setup for a jump. Like if you look at Book of Records replays, like highest jump attained or whatever, this is the kind of setup you're going to be seeing. So it immediately brings to mind that, which I don't think is a very good thing to bring to mind when you're not trying to jump really high. He gets out of it decently enough. Like, he uses it pretty well. Like, you can see that he sort of brings his leg around and uses it to push off behind him, so he can get this nice spin kick. But I don't really like the looks of this double contracted knee opener, personally. I would have liked it without it. But then he uses his leg to kick off and do sort of a 360 jump spin kick. I don't know if there's really much to say about it. He just sort of spins around and gets that kick, and it looks nice. There's just not really much to say about it. He does it pretty much as well as he could. Then he gets this grab on his head, and comes in with this really strong boom punch. And actually, looking at the aiming now, I'm really surprised that even got 4 dismemberments. Like, no, I can see it, yeah. But I don't know how he got the head off with that, actually. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Fuck. Okay, so I didn't believe in him, but it does do 4 dismemberments. It just really didn't look like it should have. Like, I don't think... It just, from the angle that he had his punch coming in, it didn't look like he should be getting that 3 dismemberment and that decap that he ended up getting. But he does, so whatever. He gets that whole thing. And then he does this really interesting thing where he grabs both of the arms. I think it's really cool how he grabs them both cross-armed like that. It looks pretty cool. But then, like, it takes a while for him to set up this self-damage thing that he's doing. Like, you can see that he gets that punch, and then he sort of lands in this pose, and he spins around, jumps up, and then throws that arm down in there. And the self-damage thing is very impressive, but I just feel like there had to be some way for him to get that kind of hit in quicker than how he did. I don't know exactly how, because, like I said, I don't make the replay, so I don't know exactly how I would have done it better. But I think there had to be some way that he could have made this follow-up a little bit quicker and made it just as nice. It is really cool that he was able to get 3 dismemberments plus the wrist falling off, though. So I really do like that. And then he does a questionable thing. So he does the arm thing, which is all cool. I like that. But then what he does, he grabs the pec with his other hand here on the other arm. Then sort of just brings it down and rips it apart. And honestly, this is another thing where I don't even know how he did that. Like, I think a lot of people have tried to break things apart from pulling them apart like that. And I've never seen anyone succeed in it. Ever. And I actually don't even know how it ended up breaking on the specific frame it did. Because it doesn't look like he was really even doing anything different than what he was doing for the previous 30 frames where he was holding it next to his leg there. So I honestly have no idea how he got that pec dismemberment. I'm going to trust that he did it in ways that are moral, I guess. But I honestly don't even know how he got that dismemberment. Even though it is impressive that he did get it, I don't like that he was just sort of sitting there hunched over with this arm right there for like 20 frames before he breaks it. I think it would have been nicer if he had I think it would have been nicer if he just hadn't gone for that pec dismemberment at all. I can see how, like, oh, I grabbed both arms, so now I gotta use both of them. But I feel like he could have done something else with this other arm rather than just sort of rip it apart like this, because I feel like it's kind of boring. And then that skeet, like, it's just a really... Okay, so Torbash just crashed. So, 1 second. Let me get back to where we were. I don't remember what I was even saying. There wasn't even really much left to say, honestly. He gets that skeet. It's a really short skeet. Not really any power behind it at all. He just sort of, flicks it off and throws it right into that chest piece. So not really a lot of power behind that skeet. And then he uses that arm to make a 3-point pose there that he had there. So overall, there are some things that are really nice about this replay, and some things that are really not. Basically, in terms of nice things, I really like that boom punch, and I really like that self-dismemberment arm swing thing. But then there are a lot of things which I really didn't like that arm ripping and the skeet and the opener. But overall, there's some cool stuff in here. So that's it for this week of my video analysis. I'll try to make one next week. Like, I've been in college, so in college is hard, so like I haven't had a lot of time to be making these. But I'll try and make them every week like I've been doing, but it's been getting hard recently. But just send your replays in, and then I'll talk about them. See you next week.